No titles are safe. Halo's coming to PlayStation. We knew that Xbox was going in a new direction. It had become pretty clear once titles started showing up on PC at the same time, and then Xbox started playing in the waters of PlayStation. And while they said, hey, we're only trying a limited number of titles, the flood dams have opened and all the titles may now be flowing over to the PlayStation platform. Now, that's sort of been the mantra given, and people just kind of came to seem to accept it. I mean, it is what it is, right? Microsoft's a business trying to make money, and they spent a whole bunch of dollar dues buying studios, and so now they got to make more money, and so that really just seems to be it. But this week there was a Hoover Dam style event where it seems like no game left behind will now be going over to the PlayStation. So in no particular order here, Hellblade 2, Age of Mythology, Gears of War. Gears of War has always been sort of a hero title for Xbox, but whatever. It's Ultimate Edition, Flight Sim, Halo Master Chief Collection, and it begs the question, like, would Starfield ever go to PlayStation? Who knows at this point? And let us not forget that Indiana Jones will also officially be going on PlayStation here in just a couple months. So with those titles, I think it's worth sort of understanding, like, hey, Microsoft is a full-on publisher at this point, and consoles, while they're still building them, are no longer the priority because, like, they got to make money. And so I want to dive into just a couple titles here, because especially the Master Chief Collection, because if you all remember, when the Master Chief Collection was released, it was rough. And rough is a pleasant way to revise history of how this launched. I mean, everything that could go wrong, from bugs to stability, it all happened with the Master Chief Collection. And Master Chief, I think everybody would probably universally agree, is Xbox at its core, right? When you want to play Halo, you buy an Xbox. But that narrative is changing. Microsoft is going to start shipping this, as it appears, the Master Chief Collection sometime in 2025 on the PlayStation platform. And so, yeah, what is an Xbox? Well, an Xbox is just a publisher, at least for the most part, as we are historically accustomed to the brand. However, I want to point out one particular thing that has happened in the somewhat recent past here when it comes to the Master Chief Collection. I believe it was a roughly-ish a year ago that Microsoft apparently made the decision to halt the development of the Master Chief Collection. I kind of am wondering aloud here if it wasn't so much they decided to halt the development as they more so decided to port the development. And if you're going to be porting a game, like a game collection, let's just call it that, to the PlayStation platform, fixing things after you've already started your port becomes problematic. And so I'm actually wondering if, when this report came out and says, hey, the Master Chief Collection, while I don't think it hit home runs for revenue for Microsoft, I'm actually really kind of just wondering if they said, okay, we're going to stop fixing bugs on this, we're going to port this over to PlayStation, and then make sure that everything is in parity before we do anything else to drive people to the platform, because as of right now, that is your priority, is getting it on PlayStation. And so, like, that narrative kind of starts to align to what we are potentially hearing now. I candidly do not know how long it takes to port a game from Xbox over to PlayStation, but I suspect we might be finding out here in the near future. Also, it does, with all these big titles coming over to the PlayStation platform, it does kind of make you wonder, like, when is Starfield going to land? I know there was a lot of, it's coming, it's not coming, it's coming, it's not coming. Like, I mean, at this point, would anybody honestly be shocked if Starfield landed on PlayStation? I think that's just sort of the mantra you have to get ready for here in the future. The other big title that is worth, and I pressed the wrong video button, but that's fine, is Flight Sim. Flight Sim has also been a sort of core tenet of not maybe Xbox, but definitely of Microsoft and of Windows over the generations. Flight Sim has always been a popular title, and while 2024 came out the door, tell me if you've heard this before, a little rough, right? There were some issues of onboarding initially, but it sounds like things have smoothed out. They've gotten rid of the turbulence, to use an aeronautical term there. It has definitely been a core staple. Bringing this over to PlayStation is interesting for a lot of reasons. One, because when it launched on specifically the Xbox Series S, it was considered a marvel of achievement because Flight Sim could actually run on that lower end, and I use lower end in quotes there. It's probably equivalent to like mid-gen hardware these days, but whatever. It doesn't really matter. But if Flight Sim comes to PlayStation, then what is really left in the Xbox staple, right? Like, what is an Xbox at that point? And it really just becomes a little bit of everything. Xbox is just a publisher who also happens to make a console, and they're chasing the dollars any way they can because, again, they've spent so much money building up these studios, they've got to be able to recover it at some point. Now, the other thing here that I think is worth pointing out is, again, roughly a year ago, I don't know if this time's up to the Master Chief Collection or not, but the timing is all there. Sarah Bond was said to have set up a new team dedicated to the preservation and forward compatibility. I am seriously wondering if some of the communication that this got leaked out through, and I'm not blaming Jez here in any meaningful way, I definitely think there was probably a team set up. I am actually wondering if that team was more charged with, hey, your goal and objective is to make it as easy as possible to port Xbox titles over to PlayStation, and we should mention Switch too, platforms. That kind of falls into that same game preservation, right? And forward compatibility. Well, maybe forward compatibility was the incorrect phrasing, and it was horizontal compatibility, meaning bringing titles over to the Switch platform, and more importantly for the discussion today, bringing titles over to the PlayStation platform. It all kind of aligns if you put things together, not perfectly, and again, we don't quite know how long it takes to port a title, but it's very clear with all of these big branded titles now shipping, well, soon to be shipping, I should say, over on the PlayStation platform, and there's already titles we know that are coming that have been announced. Microsoft has figured out relatively easily, again, in quotes, how to bring Xbox titles to competing platforms, which I really think bleeds nicely into the next generation of Xbox, which I seriously doubt will have any proprietary pieces of hardware included. Now don't confuse proprietary for speed, right? There's a difference there. They can have really fast proprietary components for their console or whatever, but I mean like specific custom chips or things that aren't necessarily off the shelf, because Microsoft, in my opinion, is going to be building something in the most generic hardware fashion sense possible, basically aka building a gaming PC, because that is neutral hardware about as it gets. And so if they can build neutral hardware, that porting to anything specific for Switch or PlayStation becomes even easier, because you're not fighting console, Xbox, and PC compatibility back and forth. You're only fighting basically PC to console, and that's assuming that the PlayStation 5 doesn't also just really go down that route. I think we can all expect that the Xbox next gen and PlayStation next gen will have some sort of NPU, and that might be the only customized hardware, but again, it's probably coming from AMD, so how custom is it really? It's really probably just a derivative, or potentially even exactly the NPUs that they're already shipping for their higher end chipsets today. So I think it's just, then we haven't even talked about the Switch 2, which is reportedly launching here in like a month or two. It's supposed to be in the springtime of 2025. Microsoft has already guaranteed that Call of Duty is coming to it in some fashion, right? That was part of their agreement when they purchased Activision. And so the expectation here is that's probably the tip of the iceberg. We'll start bringing more titles. The hardware componentry and scaling of the games to that specific platform will be interesting. But at this point, I think you have to assume that the following is true going forward. All Xbox games are going to launch on PC probably about the exact same time they launch on the console. All Xbox games will move to PlayStation and potentially the Switch at some point during their life cycle. Any title that does not is going to be a very rare exception, because you think about it from Microsoft's perspective. So they're going to build a title, give it a budget of whatever many dollar dues you really want, and then they have to go internally and say, look, by doing this exclusivity on our own console, we will make X amount of more revenue in hardware sales. Does that outcompete the amount of revenue we would make by selling it on PlayStation and the Switch? And we all know the answer to that is probably no. But I'm not saying it won't happen, but I think timed exclusives you're going to be your best case scenario here. And most importantly, Xbox is a publisher first, a software vendor second, and a hardware vendor third. I think that is going to be the narrative. Now, software vendor, they already sell Windows, and I don't mean that. I mean quite literally for the next gen Xbox, where a third party can now build an Xbox, right? That is definitely going to be something they would have to license. Microsoft's not going to give that away for free. And so, right, you have they publish games, they sell their OS, and then they ship their own hardware third. And the third component is going to be their, I don't want to say least important, but of the tenants in their charter to earn revenue, it's going to be the hardest to derive revenue, or I should say margin and net income, compared to the other two pieces of their charter effectively. So yeah, this is just, we all expected this, but when you start to see like Halo and Flight Sim, there's nothing left, right? There's nothing left that Microsoft wouldn't do at this point. They're not your friend. They're there to make money, and this becomes really, really clear that the Xbox brand is going to evolve more during this time period than we have probably ever seen in its life cycle. And I include the launch, right? Because, hey, they are trying to make money. And unfortunately, as it turns out, Game Pass is not enough. And so they have to find other ways to grow and recover that revenue that they have invested the past few years. So there you go. Just kind of wrapping up a few tidy ends and nutshells and whatever else. So as always, my friends, make sure to keep it subscribed here, because the BS on this channel is me.